Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought that I would talk about the boxing fight that is going to be happening tomorrow. And I do apologize for not necessarily releasing my fight prediction a little bit earlier, but I thought all in all that I would talk about this because I thought it was very particularly interesting. And this is going to be a fight at 154 pounds between Mr. Danny Garcia and Jose Benavidez Jr. And this is going to be a very particularly interesting fight, not only I believe because you're going to have a Mexican American fighter versus a Puerto Rican American fighter, but also both of these fighters, when it comes down to it, I believe, are someone on their last legs. Danny Garcia, of course, within his last fight, I believe at least the last fight that I remember him in was against Mr. Errol Spence Jr. Maybe he fought Ivan Redkach, I can't necessarily remember. But Danny Garcia, in my opinion, he's actually been a very decent fighter throughout his career. I would not rank him A plus. I wouldn't rank him A. I would say about A minus. But he is a person, even in the best of his fights when he fought Keith Thurman and Sean Porter and Errol Spence Jr., he is usually going to give you a very, very tough time. And this is, in my opinion, a somewhat dangerous fight for Danny Garcia. Not necessarily because I think Jose Benavidez is really that good of a fighter, because every fight that I've seen him in against an elite fighter, I don't think that he really showed off that well. But he is very tall, he is very lengthy. And at the end of the day, if Danny Garcia does not take him as seriously as what he should, or overall if he does not have the same mentality as what he once did, this could be a fight that ends up in the hands of Mr. Jose Benavidez Jr. So it is going to be very, very particularly interesting. But anyways, when it comes down to it, who do I personally predict is going to win this fight? I am going to go with that of Danny Swift Garcia. I believe that Danny Garcia is the better fighter of the two. I believe that even if he loses this fight, that all around peak v peak, that Danny Garcia still would be the better fighter of the two. But once again, that does not mean that Danny Garcia still cannot lose this fight. And of course, once again, the reason why that is because this may be very similar to the Miguel Cotto Austin Trout situation. Now, Austin Trout, in my opinion, at his peak form, he was decently better than what Jose Benavidez Jr. ever was. But at the end of the day, this is going to be a decent boxer facing a guy that overall is going to be taller and lengthier than him and might have a little bit of slick ability. So he is going to have to be very, very decently careful. In my opinion, what is Danny Garcia going to have to do in this fight? What he has to do in this fight is that I believe that he has to pressure Jose Benavidez. Jose Benavidez is a fighter that if you let him, what he mainly tries to do is over. He's either going to press you forward or he's going to stay in the middle of the ring and he's going to use his long, lengthy reach to try to outcounter you, especially overall with that right hand. So Danny Garcia, in my opinion, he can't run into any shots here, but he is overall going to have to use his jab. He is going to have to go to the body early, kind of like what Terrence Crawford did against Jose Benavidez. And on top of that, when it comes down to it, in my view, he's going to have to try to trap him up against the ropes, get those hooks in like Danny Garcia overall usually likes to do, and then overall do a body attack, and eventually you might be able to break him down. Jose Benavidez does have decent power, but he does not have the power of what a Danny Garcia has, so Danny should have the power advantage overall in this fight. He is a very decent counterpuncher, but we'll see all in all what happens. I believe that Danny Garcia more than likely is going to win this fight by decision. I would predict overall if this was the Danny Garcia before the Errol Spence Jr. fight that he would have won this fight by knockout. But I don't believe that Danny Garcia, in my view, is the same mental fighter that he once was. Because I believe after the Keith Thurman and Sean Porter losses, Danny Garcia maybe could convince himself that he just lost those fights because maybe either A, he just did not do enough to win, or B, when it comes down to it, that maybe A, he could have convinced himself that he possibly won those fights because both of those fights were decently competitive. But when he fought Errol Spence Jr., and when you lose to someone like that, your mentality, in my opinion, completely changes. Especially someone like Danny Garcia, who relied a lot on his confidence. You could tell that after that fight, he basically said, wow, I don't think that there was really anything else that I could do against Errol Spence. He was just that much better than I was. And, not only that, but his power and overall his performance, it was just A grade, A class. Well, Danny Garcia, we're going to see how strong mentally he becomes in this fight, and he usually is very strong mentally. I've never seen Danny Garcia give up. I've never seen him quit. But all in all, once again, this may be very similar to when Miguel Cotto was in that little slump right after he lost to Floyd Mayweather Jr. So it's going to be very, very interesting. But I'm going to predict Danny Garcia to win this fight by decision. It should be very, very particularly interesting. This is a fight with two fighters that overall are someone on their last legs. But I do believe that Danny Garcia is the better all around fighter, or he should be. But once again, If he were to lose, I would not be shocked. He does have to take this fight very, very seriously. And overall, he is going to have to make this fight a little bit ugly. Benavidez, if he wants to win this fight, I believe that his best option overall is to use that jab, use your reach overall to outreach Danny Swift Garcia, try to get him to throw a little bit wild sometimes that he can do, get him a little bit uncomfortable, keep that jab in his face, use that right hand to go down to the body, move around, use your legs, use your feet, and of course Benavidez, he does not have that great of legs in my opinion, especially ever since the gunshot to the leg. But when it comes down to it all in all, he is going to have to try to use that movement in this fight. He's going to have to try to keep Danny somewhat off of him. He's going to have to try to keep it in the middle of the ring where he can outreach him, or he's going to have to try to press Danny forward if Danny will allow it. But we'll see what happens. And I'll have to watch out for incoming counters because Danny can be very fast and he has a hell of a wallop within his punches. As for Danny, once again, I believe that he's going to have to press forward, and I believe that he's going to have to make this fight very decently ugly. He can possibly be on the back foot and counter if he wants to, but with a lengthier opponent like that of Jose Benavidez Jr., I don't think that that's the best thing to do. I think that you need to make this fight ugly. I think you need to use your jab, push him up against the ropes. Overall, have an offensive attack for the majority of the fight. You have enough power eventually to break him down, in my opinion. And the more that you're going to be able to push him against the ropes, the more he'll lose confidence. So we'll see what happens. But anyways, that's really about it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I do have Danny Garcia winning this fight, and we'll see what happens. But that's pretty much about it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later.